Jaya Radha Giri Dadi Radha Giri Dadi Sri Radhe. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Asvatara Satashi Srimad Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Asvatara Satashi Srimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premananda Hari Hari Bol. So we're reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, chapter 34, Jet Age Parivrajacharya. This is from May 1971. Srila Prabhupada prepared for extensive world travel. Although his itinerary was indefinite, his general plan was to travel widely for a few months, then tour the US, visit London, and then return to India. He had sent disciples to Australia and Malaysia, and he wanted to visit them. He also wanted to go to Moscow and was awaiting a letter of permission from the Soviet government. As he had spread his movement in America, visiting major cities and preaching, and then stationing a few faithful disciples there to carry on, he now expanded his field to include the whole world. Srila Prabhupada's traveling was in the mood of Narada Muni, the eternally wandering devotee. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada had translated Narada Muni's words. This is a quotation from Bhagavatam. I traveled all over the world, fully satisfied and without being proud or envious. I do travel everywhere by the grace of the Almighty Vishnu, either in the transcendental world or in the three divisions of the material world, without any restriction, because I am fixed up, unbroken in the devotional service of the Lord. I do travel, as above mentioned, by constantly singing the glories of the Lord in transcendental message, by vibrating this instrument of Veena, charged with the transcendental sound and given to me by Lord Krishna. And in his Bhagavatam purports, Srila Prabhupada had explained, another quotation, it is the duty of a mendicant to have experience of all varieties of God's creation as Parivrajacharya, or traveling alone through all forests, hills, towns, villages, etc., to gain faith in God and strength of mind, as well as to enlighten the inhabitants of the message of God. A sannyasi is duty-bound to take all these risks without any fear, and the most typical sannyasi of the present age is Lord Chaitanya, who traveled in the same manner through central India, enlightening even the tigers, bears, snakes, deers, elephants, and many other jungle animals. In the age of Kali, Srila Prabhupada had explained, sannyas is especially difficult. If, however, one did take sannyas, another quotation, one who may take the vow of renunciation of family life may not imitate the Parivrajakacharyas like Narada or Lord Chaitanya, but may sit down at some holy place and devote the whole time and energy in hearing and repeatedly chanting the holy scriptures left by the great acharyas like the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Yet Prabhupada was traveling as a mendicant missionary, Parivrajacharya, having already attained the advanced stage wherein the pure devotee resides in Vrindavan and chants Hare Krishna incessantly. He was now traveling for the good of the whole world. He, like Narada, was traveling to all parts of the world. As a news writer in India had appropriately titled him, He was a jet age Parivrajacharya. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 14, the Forest of Enjoyment, text 13. Let's see if we can chant it like this on the board, but I'm not sure if it will work. My apologies. Ekadasat prasangan nikrita Matir Vyudaka Shota Shalanavat Ubayato Pidukadam Hakandam Abhiyati Ekadasat Prasangan Nikrita Matir Vyudaka Shota Skalanavat Ubhayato Pidukadam Hakandam Abhiyati Ekadasat Prasangan Nikrita Matir Vyudaka Shota Skalanavat Ubhayato Pidukadam Hakandam Abhiyati. Ekadasat Prasangan Nikrita Matir Vyudaka Shota Skalanavat Ubhayato Pidukadam Hakandam Abhiyati. Ekadasat Prasangan Nikrita Matir Vyudaka Shota Skalanavat Ubhayato Pidukadam Hakandam Abhiyati. Ekadasat Prasangan Nikrita Matir Vyudaka Shota Skalanavat Ubhayato Pidukadam Hakandam Abhiyati. Ekadasat Prasangan Nikrita Matir Vyudaka Shota Skalanavat Ubhayato Pidukadam Hakandam Abhiyati. Ekadasat Prasangan Nikrita Matir Vyudaka Shota Skalanavat Ubhayato Pidukadam Hakandam Abhiyati. Ekadasa prasangan nikrita Matyev yudaka shotaska lanavat Ubhayato pidukadam Hakandam abhiyati Ekadasat prasangan nikrita Matyev yudaka shotaska lanavat Ubhayato pidukadam Hakandam abhiyati. Word for word. Ekada, sometimes. Asat prasangat, by association of non-devotees who are against the Vedic principles and who manufacture different paths of religion. Nikrita mati, whose intelligence has been brought to the abominable status of defying the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vyudaka shrota, into rivers without sufficient water. Skalanavat, like jumping. Ubayata, from both sides. Api, although. Dukadam, giving distress. Hakandam, the atheistic path. Abhiyati, he approaches. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Sometimes, to mitigate distress in this forest of the material world, the conditioned soul receives cheap blessings from atheists. He then loses all intelligence in their association. This is exactly like jumping into a shallow river. As a result, one simply breaks his head. He is not able to mitigate his sufferings from the heat, and in both ways he suffers. The misguided conditioned soul also approaches so-called sadhus and swamis who preach against the principles of the Vedas. He does not receive benefit from them, either in the present or in the future. Purport. Cheaters are always there to manufacture their own way of spiritual realization. To get some material benefit, the conditioned soul approaches these pseudo-sannyasis and yogis for cheap blessings, but he does not receive any benefit from them, either spiritual or material. In this age, there are many cheaters who show some jugglery and magic. They even create gold to amaze their followers, and their followers accept them as God. This type of cheating is very prominent in Kali Yuga. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes the real guru in this way. Samsaradhava lalita loka tranaya karunya gana ganatvam praptasya kalyana gunanavartya vande guru shri charanarvindam. One should approach a guru who can extinguish the blazing fire of this material world, the struggle for existence. People want to be cheated, and therefore they go to yogis and swamis who play tricks, but tricks do not mitigate the miseries of material life. If being able to manufacture gold is a criterion for becoming God, then why not accept Krishna, the proprietor of the entire universe, wherein there are countless tons of gold? As mentioned before, the color of gold is compared to the will-o'-the-wisp or yellow stool. Therefore, one should not be allured by gold manufacturing gurus, but should sincerely approach a devotee like Jad Bharat. Jad Bharat instructed Rahugana Maharaj so well that the king was relieved from the bodily conception. One cannot become happy by accepting a false guru. A guru should be accepted as advised in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.3.21. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jigyasu shreya uttamam. One should approach a bona fide guru to inquire about the highest benefit of life. Such a guru is described as follows. Shabde pare chanishnatam. Such a guru does not manufacture gold or juggle words. He is well versed in the conclusions of Vedic knowledge. Vedaischa saver aham eva vedya. He is freed from all material contamination and is fully engaged in Krishna's service. If one is able to obtain the dust of the lotus feet of such a guru, his life becomes successful. Otherwise, he is baffled, both in this life and in the next. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master is kindly opening my eyes with the shining torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I love the way Srila Prabhupada has used the words to really bring out this point. So, asat prasangat. Now we can see that asat, you know, yes, this is temporary, asat, yes, not eternal, not real. Asat prasangat. So Prabhupada says, by association of non-devotees who are against the Vedic principles and who manufacture different paths of religion. So this is why we need Srila Prabhupada's explanation, yes? So that we get a deep understanding of what the verses in Srimad Bhagavatam mean. Otherwise, we may just skim over the surface. But to have Srila Prabhupada giving these very elaborate translations and purports, we get the opportunity to dive into the understanding of Srimad Bhagavatam and really have our perception of this forest of material enjoyment challenged. We need our perception of the world challenged, because too often, I mean, Maya is very, very strong. The illusory energy is very strong. And we are presented with this picture of the material world that looks so enticing, that looks very appealing. And as Srila Prabhupada's explaining today, so often we fall victim to being cheated in this material world. But why do we become cheated? I love the way Prabhupada talks about this. He says, our intelligence, nikritamati, whose intelligence has been brought to the abominable status of defying the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So from those two words, we get such a deep understanding. Our intelligence is brought to an abominable status when we do not accept the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in our lives. It's an abominable status. Why? Because it is completely against our nature. Our nature is pure spirit soul, the eternal servant, dasa dasa anudas. We are eternally the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when our intelligence becomes bewildered in this forest of material enjoyment, as we've been hearing in these chapters, there are so many allurements and distractions and ways that we become bewildered in this material world. When our intelligence becomes bewildered, we fall down to an abominable status. It's abominable because it is so against our real nature as being the eternal servant of Krishna, joyful in a loving relationship with Krishna. But we become abominable. Such a strong word, actually. Just like jumping into a river, trying to get relief from the heat, but the river is shallow. And what do? We just break our heads. Yeah, this is what Prabhupada explains in this verse. We simply break our heads. Therefore, we suffer in both ways. We haven't got relief from the heat, which is what we were trying to do by jumping into the river. We don't get that relief. And what happens? We have a broken head. So we suffer in both ways. So we're looking for relief in this world. And by looking for relief, we set ourselves up to be cheated. As Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, people want to be cheated. This is a very strong statement. People want to be cheated, and therefore they go to yogis and swamis who can play tricks. But tricks do not get rid of the miseries of this material world. No trick can mitigate those miseries. People want to be cheated. That really struck me when I read this. People want to be cheated. Why do we want to be cheated? I was thinking about this point. And there's one part in Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada writes in a purport, that one of the reasons, there are many, but one of the reasons that people turn toward atheistic philosophy is because of fear. Fear of an eternal personal relationship. Yeah? That we have so many problems with relationships in this world that easier to think that it's so daunting to think that eternally I'm going to have personal relationships. I have to have a personal relationship with a personal God and all the other living entities. That's going to be such a headache. So easier to think that I become nothing. There are no relationships. We just disappear. I am nothing. So this is one of the reasons, out of fear of personal relationships, that people can turn to atheistic philosophy. And when we consider actually deeply in our life, a lot of our decisions are based on fear. That something is unknown, or perhaps we have an idea of something that's going to happen in the future. Therefore, we feel fearful and we make decisions based on trying to alleviate the fear, as Prabhupada says, trying to mitigate the misery. So we're basing our decisions on fear. And the material world, the material energy and persons within it really take advantage of this. And, there's this little saying now. I had no idea what it meant the first time somebody wrote it in a text. FOMO, FOMO, fear of missing out. There are so many fears, right? And we're basing our decisions off of fear. So because there's this now, due to social media and everything being online, everybody showing their exciting life, there's this big fear of missing out, right? And so this is really capitalized on. If you don't do this, you're missing out. If you don't have this, you're missing out. If you don't look like this, you're missing out. Your life will be so much better if you have this, and this, right? So this is fed to us, and we can call it the false advertising of the material world, yeah? That material energy and persons within it, they create this picture of, if you just have this, you'll be happy. Or if you just have this, you're going to be satisfied. We were recently in Australia with my family, my daughter and I, and they watched TV. And my daughter's not used to television, And so many advertisements come on. And especially during the day, I think maybe they really pictured it older people who are at home during the day. So there's so many advertisements for this type of heater, this type of pillow, this type of anything. And they go on for quite a long, it's not just a short thing. They really pitch it to you, And my daughter was watching and she was saying to me, Mummy, this looks really good, maybe we could get this. Look at that heater, look what it does. And I was So I was playing into it with her, just trying to get her to think about it, Oh, do you think our life would be so much better with this heater? And what would your room be like if you had the heater? And anyway, but this is the advertising that we get from the material world, yeah? You have this, you're going to be happy. Or if you have this, your fear will lessen. You'll become less afraid. But what is fear? What is the basis of fear? The basis of fear, Prabhupada explains in all of his books, is ignorance, is lack of knowledge. Yeah? And there's another small example from being with my family. They live in North Queensland, and so in North Queensland, in the area where I'm from, there are crocodiles in the waterways. It's normal. So for it's a normal thing, you know. So for local people and people who have knowledge of that area, they're not afraid. My uncle calls them those lizards. You know, did you see any of those lizards down the river? So, you know, there's no fear because there's also an understanding. There's an understanding there are different types of crocodiles, and the ones that are not fearful are the freshwater crocodiles. Saltwater crocodiles we avoid. Freshwater crocodiles, they're actually fine in the waterways. They're timid animals. So for someone with, no, honestly. So they're smaller and they're timid, right? So for someone like my uncle, even for myself, I'm not afraid of going swimming in those areas where I know there are freshwater crocodiles. But for Sati, my cousin said, oh, there are crocodiles here. She's like, oh, you know, so scary, such a scary concept. But with knowledge, those fearful concepts, we can categorize them properly. Yes, there may be some, you know, there needs to be awareness, of course, and awareness of how to act. But fear goes away with knowledge. And what is our biggest ignorance in this world? We think we're the body. We don't know who we are. And so when we have an existence that's based on that ignorance, we don't know who we are. I have no idea what my life's purpose is. I have no idea what's going to happen to me after death. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of so many things. And in my life, I'm making decisions based upon that fear. And so when someone presents something to me, there's a yogi, a guru, or even just advertising in the material world, if someone's going to present something that's going to alleviate my fear, I'm going to go for that. I will take that. Okay, you know, chant this mantra and you will become God. Okay, that sounds good. You know, I'll try that. I'll try so many things because I'm coming from a basis of ignorance and fear. So the greatest gift we have is this removal of ignorance. And in Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada says in the second chapter, 16th verse in the purport, he says that removal of ignorance involves the re-establishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that in of itself, that protects us from cheaters and from atheistic philosophy. Because removal of ignorance means we need to understand who we are, who is God, what is our relationship, what is our difference, so we don't get mixed up in our philosophical approach. And then we're protected from being cheated. But how do we remove this ignorance? How do we get that opportunity? We need to take shelter of a spiritual master. And as Srila Prabhupada says in this purport today, that we must approach a spiritual master who can relieve us from the bodily conception. Approaching a spiritual master is not a fashion, it's not a small thing, as Srila Prabhupada explains so many times, you know, that we approach a spiritual master just for cheap blessing. We don't want to approach him that way. We need to approach a spiritual master to get out of ignorance, just as Arjuna does in Bhagavad Gita. So I wanted to read Arjuna's very famous statement and Srila Prabhupada's purport. So this is Bhagavad Gita 2:7. Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. This is the mood of the disciple before the Guru. And Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, by nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone, just as we're hearing in these chapters. In every step, there is perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. All Vedic literature advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master to get free from the perplexities of life which happen without our desire. They are like a forest fire which somehow blazes without being set by anyone. Similarly, the world situation is such that perplexities of life automatically appear without our wanting such confusion. Nobody wants fire, and yet it takes place, and we become perplexed. The Vedic wisdom therefore advises that in order to solve the perplexities of life and to understand the science of the solution, one must approach a spiritual master who's in the disciplic succession. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not, therefore, remain in material perplexities, but approach a spiritual master. That is the purport of this verse. Who is the man in material perplexities? It is he who does not understand the problems of life. This human form of life is the most valuable asset for the living entity, who can utilize it for solving the problems of life. Therefore, one who does not utilize this opportunity is a miser. So we can see how that really connects with this section in Srimad Bhagavatam. This fire, this forest fire of material enjoyment, forest fire of the material world. Nobody wants perplexities, and yet they appear. How do we get out of that? We need to approach a spiritual master. So the greatest gift that the spiritual master gives us is knowledge and devotion. So knowledge of the Supreme Lord, our relationship with him, and to show us how to execute the path of devotion. Those things, they can lead to us becoming fearless in this world. Fearless in the struggle for existence, Srila Prabhupada says. And a very famous example of this is Prahlad Maharaj. So when Prahlad Maharaj was within the womb, he was hearing from his spiritual master, Narada Muni. Very extraordinary example, very extraordinary. But he took everything in, and his devotion to his spiritual master was so strong that even after undergoing all of his trials in his life, and they were more than any of us will ever expect to experience, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, when he was face to face with Lord Nrsingadev, and Lord Nrsingadev was offering to give him benedictions, what did Prahlad Maharaj ask for? Anyone remember? Yes? Sorry? Yes, he had that conviction, but there was something that he asked of Lord Nrsingadev. He prayed for others. He prayed for others, yes. And he prayed that I want constant devotion to my spiritual master, to Narada Muni. He said, because of him, I'm seeing you. How could I ever leave his service? So even though Prahlad Maharaj face to face with the Supreme Lord, there was always his spiritual master. He's always meditating on his spiritual master and praying for undeviating devotion to his Guru. Because it is through the grace of the spiritual master that we can approach Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, we have no chance. Without being hooked up, and as Prabhupada says, needs to be a spiritual master in the disciplic succession. By hooking up into this disciplic succession, we gain access to all of the blessings of Krishna. We gain access to this fearlessness that Krishna gives. And as we have the example of Srila Prabhupada, completely fearless in his service, yeah? Doing extraordinary things, as we're just reading in the Lilamrita jet age Parivrajacharya, at a very old age, he is able to do so much because of his connection to his spiritual master and all through the disciplic succession. And there is access to all of that potency coming down through the disciplic succession. What is it that we have access to through disciplic succession? There's one very nice verse in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam from the first canto, first chapter, text 14. Living entities who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately, even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. I love this verse. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, there is no one in creation who is not afraid of the rage of the Almighty. Great asuras like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, and others, who were very powerful living entities, were killed by this personality of Godhead. And the Almighty Vasudeva has empowered his name with the powers of his personal self. Everything is related to him, and everything has its identity in him. It is stated herein that the name of Krishna is feared even by fear personified. Therefore, the name of Krishna is as powerful as Lord Krishna himself. Anyone, therefore, can take advantage of the holy names of Lord Sri Krishna even in the midst of the greatest danger. The transcendental name of Krishna, even though uttered unconsciously or by force of circumstances, can help one obtain freedom from the hurdle of birth and death. So the name of Krishna. Krishna is so powerful that he is feared even by fear personified. Very powerful statement. So Krishna can deliver this fearlessness to us, and we have access to that through the parampara. But what is it that Lord Sri Krishna is afraid of? What does Krishna become afraid of? To be sold out to the devotees. He makes himself, that's rare, isn't it? That's rare. But Krishna has a certain fear that we're celebrating this month. He is afraid of the stick of Mother Yashoda. Everyone is afraid of Krishna, right? Krishna is fear personified is afraid of Krishna, right? But what does Krishna become afraid of? His mother with a stick. And this shows us that as we celebrate this month, it is only pure bhakti that controls Krishna. Knowledge is not enough. As we were talking about, we need knowledge to get rid of ignorance, right? So that we can try and face the world with the proper perspective and not being fearful. But just knowledge is not enough. Guru doesn't just give knowledge. Guru shows us the path of devotion. So alongside of gaining knowledge, we need to gain experience in devotion. And it is only through devotion, as we just described in Damodarastakam, right? That Krishna is showing all these great, great personalities who are just interested in Vedic rituals and things. That he's only conquered by devotees whose pure love is imbued with intimacy, right? We need to develop that love for Krishna. And Krishna becomes conquered by that. Acyuta becomes Jit. He becomes conquered. And he becomes conquered to such a degree that he's sincerely afraid of his mother. And he's shaking. You know, you see sometimes little children when they're scared. But Krishna is not just acting. Krishna is afraid of his mother. Mother Yashoda has the stick. Krishna sees her. His eyes become fearful. His necklace starts shaking because his little neck is trembling. His earrings are swinging. Oh, here's mother, and she's going to get me with the stick. So this is a real pinnacle of not only just personal philosophy, but this is a real pinnacle of understanding. Who is the Supreme Personality of God? Yeah? He is a person that gets afraid, becomes scared of his mother due to so much love. But as I mentioned, just knowledge alone is not enough, and that's what this pastime shows us. Knowledge alone is not enough. Our approach to Krishna must be saturated with love. And there's another wonderful pastime from Krishna book, Canto, that illustrates this. And we have the pastime of the Yajnik Brahmanas and their wives. So the Yajnik Brahmanas, they were expert in Vedic rituals. They were performing all the proper yajna, and they were very absorbed in that, very knowledgeable Brahmanas. And yet when the cowherd boys came to them in the forest, they did not recognize the supremacy of Krishna. And they didn't even answer the boys. Prabhupada says like this. They didn't even answer the boys. So the boys requested to the Brahmanas, now is a good time in your yajna. Now is the time when you can give us some prasadam. We're hungry. Krishna and Balaram are here in the forest and they're hungry. So please give us some prasadam. Those Brahmanas did not look at the boys. They didn't answer the boys. They didn't acknowledge them at all. And when the cowherd boys went back to Krishna and told him this, Krishna smiled. Yeah. And Prabhupada writes there in Krishna book that this is the way of preaching, that sometimes people won't even speak to you. Yes, they won't acknowledge you at all. So Krishna said to the cowherd boys, don't worry about the Brahmanas, you go to their wives. Their wives are great devotees. So the boys, they went and they approached the wives. Krishna had told them, actually, don't tell them that it's me who's hungry, because they're so devoted, they'll just get into like a frenzy. But the cowherd boys kind of forgot about that instruction. And so they went to the ladies and they said, Krishna and Balaram are here in the forest. Just hearing that Krishna and Balaram were there in the forest, the ladies just immediately, no thought for anything else, collected prasadam and they're going straight, just rushing to Krishna. Their devotion was just gushing toward Krishna. And when they saw Krishna in the forest, Krishna was holding a lotus flower and spinning a lotus flower. Yeah? I've heard my Guru Maharaj explain this pastime, says that Krishna was communicating to the gopis, just as your heart is spinning for me, my heart is spinning for you, showing you this by spinning this little lotus flower in my hand. And so the ladies, they presented their prasadam to Krishna, and they wanted to stay with him. They wanted to stay with him so badly in the forest. But they listened to Krishna's instructions when Krishna said to them, you're very respectable ladies. You should go back to your husband. So eventually they went back. Now, the really interesting part of this pastime is the wives went back to their husbands. At that point, the husbands actually recognized, oh, we've made a terrible mistake. Vedascha Saveraham Eva Vedya. Krishna is the purpose of the Vedas. And we missed it. We missed the opportunity to serve Krishna. Our wives are better devotees than we are. Even though they recognized that, they didn't go to Krishna in the forest. What was the reason they didn't go? They were afraid of Kamsa. Even though they understood, so they had knowledge, right? They got a glimpse of oh, that's actually Krishna, the Supreme Lord, and we're meant to serve him. That's the purpose of all our Vedic sacrifice. And yet, because of fear, they were unable to approach Krishna in the forest because they hadn't developed bhakti. Whereas their wives, no thought of fear of Kamsa, they just ran to Krishna. So this is the power of devotion, and this is what we need to develop. That knowledge and bhakti, that knowledge and devotion together, so that we understand what is happening and we have that real love for Krishna. Then we become fearless in this world, totally fearless in this world. And we see that in the example of all of our acharyas and the great devotees who have come before us And we can even look around and see that in devotees' lives today. Devotees who are fearless in their service. Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita that a devotee is always daring and bold in devotional service. Yeah. So this is our legacy. This is what we receive through parampara. So this is what we have access to, this greatest gift. And that gift, as Srila Prabhupada shows us, as all of our acharyas show us, is not meant for us alone. That gift is meant to be given. So as we are hooked up to the parampara, and that mercy is coming down to us, we are meant to help connect others and share that mercy. And this is a very potent month for that. This is such a special time, such a sweet time where we can meditate on the Lord's pastimes and meditate on how we can assist others in getting free from this forest of the material world. Otherwise, as Prabhupada says at the end of the purport, Prabhupada says, if one is able to obtain the dust of the lotus feet of such a guru, his life becomes successful. Otherwise, he is baffled in this life and in the next. That may sound kind of simplistic, but those are the two options, really. We're baffled by the material energy, or we're getting free from the material energy by taking shelter of the spiritual master and connecting ourselves to Krishna through parampara. So those are some thoughts on this verse and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If anyone would like to make a comment or ask a question, try. That's interesting, isn't it? From Krishna books, Srila Prabhupada says they developed their love for Krishna simply by hearing about him. They hadn't seen Krishna before, but they developed their love for Krishna just by hearing from other ladies who would travel and go to Vrindavan and see Krishna. So they would hear the pastimes and the stories of Krishna, and they became spontaneously attracted. So who were they before that to have developed that attraction? I'm not sure, actually. That's something would be interesting to research. But Srila Prabhupada makes that point in Krishna book, that we develop our attraction to Krishna by hearing. And this is our primary way of developing that attachment to Krishna, is through hearing Krishna's glories, hearing the chanting of the holy name. The ladies were engaged like that. I mean, this is Krishna, isn't it? Krishna is ever fresh. Krishna is all attractive. So every day we're chanting Hare Krishna. Every day we can get newer and newer realizations. Every day we read the Shastra. And you might read the same thing. I especially notice this about Bhagavad Gita. Just reading Bhagavad Gita again. I'm not sure how many times I've read Bhagavad Gita, but it's a few over the years. And whenever I read Bhagavad Gita, I read newer and newer things. And this is Krishna. This is one of Krishna's qualities, yeah? Everything about Krishna is ever expanding, it's ever fresh. So our experiences in Krishna consciousness are like that. They're always expanding, they always feel new. Yeah, even when we're doing seemingly the same thing over and over again. Krishna gives us a taste, because spiritual realization just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So we may be chanting the same song. This is such a special month, you know. You can read this short chapter in Krishna book every day, and it's so nice. You can read it every day. You're not like, oh, I read this yesterday, but you know, it doesn't feel like that. Krishna has that very special quality. It's always ever fresh and new. It keeps us attracted to Krishna, and Krishna reciprocates by giving us deeper and deeper experiences and tasting Krishna consciousness. I'm sure everyone experiences that. That's why we're all here, you know. Otherwise, you know, you give a group of people the same thing to do every day, over and over, year after year. If it doesn't have that spiritual potency of bliss and eternality, then it's going to be boring after no time. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's definitely, it's so true. And this is what Srila Prabhupada gives us, and the Shastra gives us knowledge of both the material world and the bondage and why we become bound in the material world, and then knowledge of the spiritual world. We need to know those two things side by side. Yes, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says he'll give Arjuna that knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. Right? We have knowledge of of transcendence and of bondage in this material world, so that we can be intelligent enough to make choices. We're always making choices in this world. Otherwise, we remain bound. Yeah? So it's really sad, but you can see that people want to be cheated. People want to take something cheap. And like you said, if there's an element of discipline, an element of austerity, oh, no, that's too much for me. I'll take the cheaper option, you know? And we get cheated in this way and baffled, as Prabhupada says. We're baffled in this material world. We're stuck in it, going round and round because we're constantly choosing the cheap option. So this is where we need the mercy of devotees. So if by the grace of Krishna and the mercy of devotees, we come into contact with Krishna consciousness, we get to learn. Our intelligence becomes purified by studying the Shastra and chanting Hare Krishna, being with the devotees. Then we get to see, oh, actually, I'm choosing the cheap option. Why am I choosing that? I need to make better choices in my life. We need connection. We need contact with devotees, contact with Shastra, contact with the holy name, so the individual soul starts to wake up. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, we remain bound in this material world, and it's such a waste of this human form of life. So we have wonderful opportunity. We need to take that for ourselves. We need to take it and we need to give it. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.